Good evening, everyone. I'm Brian Trumbore with your nightly review for Thursday, December 27th. That's Johann Strauss, Wine, Women, and Song Waltz. It's about 4:03 p.m. Eastern Time, and I'm watching Majority Leader Harry Reid speak live on the Senate floor. And Reid is speaking right after Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell voiced his frustration. It's been high drama the last hour or so. The Dow Jones had been down about 150 points. Then a story broke that the House is reconvening at 6:30 on Sunday. But as I speak, the House really needs the Senate to send them a bill at this point, and that's what Reid and McConnell are going back and forth on, who's to blame, who hasn't cooperated, and so on. Which requires me to rewrite everything I wrote about 2 hours ago. Well, I'm just going to plow ahead. So let's kind of review a few things in the past day or two. House Speaker Boehner said he'd give members 48 hours notice to come back from their vacation. And so now they are reconvening. If they reach agreement on Monday, New Year's Eve, it would have to be a small and simple deal. Of course, Congress can always go back retroactively, but this can't drag out a couple weeks. The markets would not react well. As it is, the Dow Jones did finish down 18 to 13,096. Again, it was down 150 until this afternoon, when for some stupid reason they had the traders had a bout of optimism. The S&P 500 was down fractionally, and NASDAQ finished down 4 points. All indices were down about 0.1%. Nonetheless, the fourth down day in a row. You have to remember, it's supposed to take days to craft legislation that both the Senate and the House could approve. So again, if they reach agreement, say Monday night, it has to be small and simple. Senate Majority Leader Harry Reid needs to come up with a deal that Senate Republicans could approve. That's why this back and forth, and Reid looks a little agitated. He would be most happy to act on a reasonable Republican proposal, is the scrawl I'm reading. But he looks very concerned. Continuing. Until last night, Minority Leader Mitch McConnell had had no contact with any top Democrats for days. Then President Obama, before he hopped on the flight to come back to Washington, called McConnell, Reid, Boehner, and Nancy Pelosi to get updates on the Fiscal Cliff discussions from all four of them. But back to McConnell, who's really probably the key player at this point. He faces re-election in 2014. He doesn't want to be seen caving on taxes, though he did help Boehner craft the Plan B, which raised taxes on income over $1 million. Earlier this morning, the market collapsed a bit when Harry Reid took to the floor and said, "I don't know time-wise how it can happen now," avoiding the cliff, that is, blaming Boehner and McConnell Reid added, it looks like that's where we're headed. Democrats can't put together a plan on their own because without participation of Leader McConnell and Speaker Boehner, nothing can happen on the fiscal cliff, and so far they are radio silence. That was Harry Reid this morning. Reid said the House of Representatives was being operated with a dictatorship of the Speaker, accusing Boehner of holding up a vote on a Senate-passed bill to avoid the cliff. John Boehner seems to care more about keeping his speakership than about keeping the nation on sound financial footing, Reid said. For his part, Boehner has an election. He hopes to be re-elected among House Republicans on January 3rd. So Boehner's spokesman Michael Steele responded to Reid this morning by saying the Senate leader should talk less and legislate more. The House has already passed legislation to avoid the entire fiscal cliff. Senate Democrats have not, Michael Steele said, again the Boehner spokesman. But as Bloomberg reports, Reid urged Boehner to allow a vote on a bill the Senate passed in July that would extend tax cuts for 1 year for individual income up to $200,000 and income of married couples up to $250,000. Reid said House Democrats and some Republicans would join to pass such a plan. The thing is, the Constitution requires tax measures to be originated in the House, and this measure started in the Senate. It also doesn't address the automatic spending cuts, unemployment benefits, the estate tax, and a number of other issues with December 31 deadlines. Now, what McConnell just said on the Senate floor was he's willing to work with Reid and the Democrats on a bill that then would be sent to the House so they can act on it, amend it, whatever. But really, the tax measure should come from the House in the end. By the way, in a Gallup poll released Wednesday, 54% of Americans said they approved of the way Obama had handled the negotiations, and 45% said they approved of Democratic leaders in Congress. By contrast, only 26% said they approved of Boehner and the Republican congressional leadership. So what would the impact be of going over the cliff? The New York Post ran an editorial today that said for New Yorkers, to cite one example, quote, the average family with an annual income of $150,000, hardly a king's ransom in New York City, would see its taxes go up $6,616. That's $550 a month, or $130 each and every week, sucked out of the local economy and shipped off to Washington. And a couple earning a mere $50,000 annually will get socked too, losing more than $2,000 a year, or $170 a month, or just a little bit less than the cost of 2 monthly Metro cards. Now, if you aren't from the New York area, transportation costs continue to soar, while of course wages have stagnated. Meanwhile, those earning $1 million salaries, rare ducks in most of America, but common enough in New York, will be paying an additional $50,000 annually. And while the millionaires presumably can afford that, it remains that across the board, tax increases of such magnitude will extract hundreds of millions, if not billions, from New York's economy. At the high end, that means less money for investment and job creation. At the low end, it means even more tightly stretched household budgets. And for City Hall, it means a tighter budget too, given that its own income tax revenues will reflect an economy battered to the bone by the heavy federal tax bite. That could and probably would mean fewer cops, teachers, and firefighters. Well, late yesterday, Treasury Secretary Geithner sent a letter to Congress that the government is going to hit the $16.4 trillion debt limit on Monday. Yesterday in the nightly review, I told you it was going to be sometime this week, so Geithner's saying it's Monday. So this is the other issue. Now, the Treasury will take extraordinary measures that we all know about to buy about 2 months' time before the government would default. We are borrowing about $100 billion a month. Recall that S&P downgraded the U.S. government debt after the debt ceiling debacle of last year. S&P and other ratings firms are threatening to do the same this go around without a legitimate deficit reduction program. Boehner and Obama discussed debt ceiling extensions before their talks collapsed. Obama wants 2 years. Boehner is willing to extend the debt ceiling 1 year if Obama agrees to entitlement cuts. Now, Zachary Goldfarb of the Washington Post kind of summed it up, I think, very well. This is the issue with the fiscal cliff and the debt ceiling. If the nation goes over the fiscal cliff, two forces will work against each other. Taxes would rise and spending would be cut, requiring less U.S. borrowing and potentially delaying default. Higher unemployment and a recession would also be likely, depressing tax receipts and requiring more borrowing. Well, with all this going on, the East Coast longshoremen, the dock workers, are threatening a strike beginning Sunday that would shut seaports from Massachusetts to Texas. It'd be the first such coastwide strike since a walkout in 1977. Paralyzed the flow of tens of billions of dollars of imports, as reported by Stephen Greenhouse of the New York Times. And the nation's retailers and other businesses fear a painful replay if the 14,500 dock workers make good on their threats. More than 100 business groups have written to President Obama, urging him to intervene to push the two sides to settle, and if need be, to invoke his powers under the 1947 Taft-Hartley Act to bar a strike. President George W. Bush invoked that in 2002 to end a lockout at the ports on the West Coast, but Obama is going to be reluctant to do so and hurt his union base. On the other hand, the combination of the fiscal cliff and a strike would be horrendous. In case you're interested, longshoremen earn $124,000 in wages and benefits. The longshoremen themselves would say, well, it's really only $75,000 in wages, but it is a total package of $124,000. Longshoremen would argue that automation has done a number on their workforce, and that is true. In New York and New Jersey, the number of longshoremen has been reduced from 35,000 in the 1960s to 3,500 today. Just a note on Japan, the Tokyo Nikkei index is at 10,322. That is a 18% gain in the what will, as of tomorrow, be a 7-week winning streak. So that's pretty strong. And of course, that's due to the election of Shinzo Abe as Prime Minister, and he is now priming, along with the Bank of Japan, the fiscal pumps, driving down the yen, making Japan's exports more competitive, and the stock market is responding in kind. In Italy, Mario Monti was to meet with prospective coalition partners today. I haven't seen anything on those meetings yet to see if a run in the February election is doable. Monti will serve as the caretaker prime minister until a new government is formed. But should he seek a second stint as Prime Minister, could lead to a very fragmented parliament. You would have essentially 4 fairly equal factions. The center-left Democrats that are favored to win the election as of today, Silvio Berlusconi's center-right party, the anti-establishment 5 Star movement, which is headed by a former comedian, a real jerk, and then Monti would lead a coalition of centrist. And finally, a note from Egypt that was a little disturbing this afternoon. Now this is from Sarah El-Deeb of the AP. Egypt's chief prosecutor ordered an investigation on Thursday into allegations that opposition leaders committed treason by inciting supporters to overthrow Islamist President Mohamed Morsi. No charges have been filed, but this bears watching. This smacks of Hosni Mubarak. That's all for this evening. I'll be back with you Wednesday, January 2nd. As you know, Friday I write the Week in Review. Posted Saturday, I'm going to have my 2013 predictions, so check it out over the weekend. Then Monday's New Year's Eve. I'm not doing anything on the work front. Actually, I will be working on New Year's Eve. Might have a few beers around 6 o'clock. Wednesday, January 2nd, again, I will return. So Happy New Year. Keep the men and women of our armed forces in your thoughts and prayers. For more stuff, go to stocksandnews.com. I'm Brian Trumbord. Take care.